Good evening, a very warm welcome to you all, and thanks for joining us for this second webinar on the Local Transport Plan 4 consultation. My name is David Perrott, and I'm part of the communications team here at Wiltshire Council. I'm joined here today by Councillor Tamara Ray, Cabinet Member for Transport, Councillor Dominic Munns, Cabinet Member for Environment, Samantha Howell, Director of Highways and Transport, Sarah Valdez, Director of Environment, and Simon Lim, Highways and Transport Strategic Specialist. Before we start, I'm going to give you a quick introduction to how this webinar will work. If you wish to see closed captions of speakers' words, then please click on the CC button on the bottom right of the screen, and they should then appear after 30 seconds or so. If you're having any technical problems, the most common solution is to switch it off and switch it on again. So please close Teams or your browser, reopen it, and click on the meeting link again that was sent through earlier. Other problems may be down to your home internet connection. If you're hearing an echo, it may be that you have the event open in 2 or more windows. You're welcome to submit a question to be answered using the chat function, and if you do so, please also leave your name. Our panel will verbally answer as many questions as they're able to, but we may not get to them all. Many of you also submitted questions before the event, and we will also aim to answer as many of these as we can today. You should be able to see the slides on your screen, and over on the other side, you should be able to see the Q&A panel. For some of you, it may be beneath your screen and you'll need to scroll down to see it. You may need to click on the icon of the 2 overlapping speech bubbles to open this panel. We will also use this panel to make any announcements. It's important to note that once the webinar is over, please do complete our online survey and let us know your views. I'll post a link in the chat. Your feedback will help to shape the LTP at this important stage of the process, so please do take the time to have your say. Finally, I just need to make you aware that this webinar is being recorded and the recording will be uploaded to YouTube after the event. However, the only faces and voices that can be seen and heard in the video will be those of the presenters. Anyone attending the webinar won't be seen or heard. I'll now hand you over to Councillor Tamara Ray, Cabinet Member for Transport.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us for this webinar about our Local Transport Plan consultation. Our Local Transport Plan LTP4 covers the period 2025 to 2038 and will set the strategic direction for all transport in Wiltshire, including roads, buses, rail, walking and wheeling, freight, car parking, and much more. It sets out how Wiltshire's existing transport infrastructure will be improved in the coming years. We know that transport is an enabler for economic growth, and so we have taken a strategic, place-based approach to this LTP. As we know, what is right for our market towns and city may not be right for rural areas. We also recognise that cars are critical to Wiltshire's economy, and so the LTP is not about stopping people using cars, but about reducing congestion and enabling people to move to alternatives, such as electric vehicles, and further developing choices for public transport and active travel. With this in mind, the LTP sub-strategies are tailored to 3 different place types: principal settlements, which covers Salisbury, Trowbridge and Chippenham, market towns and rural areas. Taking this approach allows us to respond to each place's unique circumstances, and it will also help us to unlock more funding to improve transport throughout the county. The plan also contains county-wide sub-strategies that look at freight on our roads, electric vehicles and charging infrastructures, car parking and strategic transport, that's buses and rail. During this process so far, we have had several questions related to specific highways issues in our communities. Just a reminder that these requests can be captured through our local highway and footway improvement groups, known as LHFIGs. These are subgroups of our community area boards that deal specifically with highways issues. In the first instance, please contact your local town or parish council, and they will be able to raise your issue through the LHFIG process. Finally, another reminder to be sure to let us know your views as part of the consultation. We want this plan to work for everyone, wherever they are in Wiltshire and however they wish to travel. And we can only do that with your feedback. I'll now hand over to Councillor Munns. Thank you, Dom.
Thanks, Tamara, and good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining. As many of you know, Wiltshire Council has acknowledged a climate emergency and it's committed to becoming carbon neutral as an organisation by 2030. And I'm pleased to say that we're on track to do that. However, we also want to encourage and influence the rest of the county to be carbon neutral too. Transport has a huge impact. It plays a major part. It makes up 38% of all of Wiltshire's carbon emissions. So it's really important that LTP4 looks to address this. Now, Wiltshire's a large rural authority, and we understand that some people will always need cars and other vehicles to get around. But we need to ensure that there is the right mix of opportunities and options so that we're mitigating the impact on the environment as much as is realistically possible. However, what works in London and other urban areas simply won't translate to a county like Wiltshire. So we need to think a little differently while recognising the responsibilities that we all have to take action. So we're already making strides in this area, such as our thriving Wiltshire Connect on-demand bus service in the Pewsey Vale area, and we're planning to grow this into other rural areas. But we need to do more, and that's why this LTP looks at all areas of decarbonising Wiltshire's transport, whether that's decarbonising private vehicles through encouraging the use of EVs and other technologies, or improving public transport, or improving digital connectivity to reduce the need to travel in the first place. So I'll now hand over to Sam and Simon to take you through the actual presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Sam Howell. I'm Director of Highways and Transport for Wiltshire Council. We thought it'd be helpful this evening to provide a summary and overview of the local transport plan for Wiltshire. And if we're okay to move on to the next slide, we'll also set out a little bit around consultation process and timelines. And as David has said, we will leave plenty of time for questions and answers. And we hope to cover as many of those questions that have been pre-submitted and those that you're going to submit this evening as we can. And we will ensure that we provide updates to questions when we present the document in future to Cabinet. So if we're okay to move on to the next slide, thank you. I think it's important to say we have a local transport plan for Wiltshire. We adopted LTP3, as we call it, in February 2011. LTP3 runs the period to 2026, and the Department for Transport were very clear the year before last that all local transport authorities were required to update their local transport plans and make sure that the strategic transport framework was aligned to local plan reviews. I'm pleased to say we've done this. We have progressed at pace with LTP4, which is the draft which is currently out to consultation. And we undertook a number of key stages before presenting the draft document to Cabinet for consultation in November. Just to confirm, stage one of the process was to review the current LTP. So Local Transport 3, what were the aims and objectives and how well has the Council achieved delivery of all of those outcomes? And how have we influenced our partners to meet the Local Transport Plan objectives for Wiltshire? We undertook a full review in terms of the background policy, so national, regional and local context. And we also undertook a geographical review. So the changes which have happened not just in Wiltshire in the period to 2026 since 2011, but also in adjacent authorities and the national travel picture. Once we'd completed that work, we undertook a process of developing the challenges, vision and objectives for this document, which is going to run until 2038. We undertook some initial stakeholder engagement, and that has informed stage 3 of the process, which was confirming our approach, developing the strategies which we are currently consulting on, so those strategies which we intend to achieve our vision, and we have produced a number of documents which inform a comprehensive suite of LTP4. Simon is going to say a little bit more about the structure of those documents in a moment, but I want to highlight we took the document to Cabinet for approval for consultation in November, and as David has said, this is the second of our online events which we're undertaking before consultation closes on Friday the 24th of January. The key way we are asking people to respond to LTP4 is through our consultation portal. And again, Simon will say a little bit more about that in a moment. Once the consultation process has closed, we will undertake a full review of all the responses received, and we will then provide officer updates and a recommendation back to Cabinet with a hope to adopt the local transport plan. We intend to go back to Cabinet in spring, and once that process is completed, we will move forward with detailed delivery and implementation plans to ensure that our network is fit for purpose for the future, aligned to our local plan growth. Thank you. I'll pass you over to Simon.
Thank you, Sam. Good evening, everybody. I'm Simon Lim, Strategic Specialist at Highways and Transport. Can you move on to the next slide, please? Thank you. So I've got several slides that I just wanted to talk through in terms of giving the structure to the LTP and what's included, and then I'll just talk through in terms of the next steps. The LTP4 has a number of vision and, as Sam set out, and 6 objectives, and they are at the core of the LTP4 in terms of what we're trying to achieve. Alongside that, there are 4 policy areas, and they set out our approach for achieving the LTP4 vision and objectives. And under each of those policy areas, we have developed several policies to help to further detail how those aims will be achieved. Alongside that, environment sustainability considerations will also play a key role in everything we deliver as part of the LTP4. So what you'll see onto the right-hand side, there is a wheel which sets out, in summary, how the LTP is developed and the structure. So as part of underpinning it is our vision to have a safe, connected transport system that protects the country's unique natural and historic environment, and also supports sustainable economic growth across Wiltshire's communities, and contributes to a low carbon future. Next slide, please. Thank you. So there are a number of different documents that sets out in terms of what is included in the local transport plan. First is the core strategy, which sets out the overall policies for Wiltshire, and sets out the strategic direction in terms of a number of different areas across the county. And then we break them down into a number of other supporting documents, the first being place-based sub-strategies, and they are broken down into geographical areas via principal settlements, market towns, and rural areas. We also recognise that there are a certain number of areas which cover our county-wide. So alongside those specific areas that covered, we have 4 county-wide sub-strategies that covers freight, electric vehicle charging infrastructure, parking, and strategic transport. Alongside those, we have a number of appendices. The first is the sustainability assessment, and the second is the carbon paper, which underpins some of the technical assessment work to assess the likely impact of the measures that we put forward as part of the local transport plan. If you could move on to the next slide, please. So as set out in the wheel, we've got to help to deliver the vision and objectives, we need a broad mix of policies. So what we've done is define those into 4 policy areas, providing the foundation structure for our policies. So these 4 policy areas aim to avoid unnecessary travel, giving people the choice to reduce the number and length of car trips needed through the locating services, jobs and other destinations within closer reach. Shifting towards more sustainable modes of transport, providing better and more accessible options for travel via walking, wheeling, cycling, shared and public transport. Thirdly, to improve vehicle fuel and network efficiency through the rollout of electric vehicles and charging infrastructure, and also looking at alternative fuels and technology improvements. And then alongside that, supporting measures, which are very much the tools to enable the delivery of the avoid, shift and improve policy areas, both now and into the future. So we've structured the LTP4 sub-strategies, and for those of you who have had a chance to review it so far, we'll see along the avoiding, shifting and improving travel patterns. And the the idea is that they work alongside the supporting measures with each other. Each of these policy areas are essential to achieving the LTP4 vision and objectives, and the feedback from the initial round of engagement Sam alluded to earlier was the stakeholders affirmed the need to strike a balance between them, and that they work with one another and not one has a priority over the other. Could move to the next slide, please. So this sets out in a little bit more detail in terms of the supporting documents that we have to that work to within the documents. So as I set out, we've got the core LTP4 strategy, the place-based sub-strategies, the county-wide sub-strategies, and then supporting those, we have an implementation plan, which is a long list of measure types, prioritise, shortlist, and an implementation plan indicating the timescales to deliver those. Supporting all of those areas, we've got, as I said out before, we've got the carbon and sustainability assessment documents, and they are used through the quantified carbon reduction assessment, to which is guidance from the Department of Transport to assess the impact of our schemes and the measures, and that's from a baseline perspective in terms of how Wiltshire works and operates now, the impacts of our policies, and then also the rollout and timescales for the implementation of the measures as set out in the LTP. Next slide, please. So why place-based? So place-based is very much responding to approach from concerns raised as to how the LTP4 would address vast diversity of places in the county and the large rural areas. So we will consider how the LTP4 could present to best respond Wiltshire's unique circumstances while ensuring it's deliverable and can be used to leverage funding. It's not unique to Wiltshire. There are a number of other authorities that have also adopted this approach, but we see there are a number of advantages to this. First is that it aligns with the funding and the local plan spatial approach. An increasing number of funding sources offer improving places, so it's anticipated that this approach will require less work in meeting big requirements. The second is that it enables a different approach to be taken in different areas, and it's beneficial to Wiltshire's mix of urban and rural. Thirdly, it can focus on real and integrated journeys, making sure that there's a tailored approach based on how people travel from A to B, as journey types and purposes very much depend on the place, and the many journeys are multimodal. Fourthly, it complements the existing strategies. It's important to note there are a number of different working documents already taking place in the council, and such as the local cycling and walking infrastructure plans and the bus service improvement plans. And they set out a clear direction, so using a place-based approach for the LTP4 will avoid repetition of these documents and instead tailor the detail to each place type. Next is vision and objectives focus, so demonstrate how policies meet vision and objectives in each place type, integrating with wider council policies such as decarbonisation, social inclusion and digital connectivity. And then finally, recognising the growth of place-based structure will provide this foundation for developing more detailed strategies and investment plans for each area, and they may have differing agendas for growth and identifying priority places for investment. Next slide, please. And finally, in relation to the carbon paper, there are a number of assumptions around each of the different measures from avoid, shift and improve in terms of the likely impact that is to have on the carbon savings. I won't go through those in detail, but they align to, as mentioned before, the measures that are set out within the local Transport Plan 4, but also existing measures that we already have proposed, such as the bus service improvement plan and our emerging EV implementation plan. Next slide, please. Just a reminder of the dates. So the consultation closes on the 24th of January. This is our second webinar. We've got hard copies available for those of you who do want to view them across 15 libraries. So further information can be found at the address wiltshire.gov.uk/local transport plan, with current view to have the final document adopted in the spring this year. Next slide, please. Again, just for those of you that haven't had chance to have a look, this is some snapshots from the consultation portal. So there are a number of different what we call sort of tiles and tabs for each of the different documents. There is a consultation user guide, so if you would like to look at that to give you an idea of how to navigate the page, and you can also sign up for regular updates on the local transport plan progress. I think one of the things that's important to state is you do not need to respond to each of the individual documents. However, we'd obviously welcome more responses the better, but if there is a particular document or strategy that you are wanting to come on, there are individual tabs for each of those to respond to the survey. Thank you for listening. I'll now pass back over to David.
Thank you very much. So we now come to the question and answer part of tonight's webinar. The panel will do their best to respond to as many questions as we can this evening, starting with your pre-submitted questions. So the first question of the evening, and this one is for Sam, is how much money is available for small projects that can make a big difference to communities and individuals' lives? If money is available, how simple will it be to apply, and what are the criteria?
Thank you, David, and thank you very much for the question. So funding for small projects can be secured through a variety of ways. It may be direct funding from Wiltshire Council. Grant funding can also be secured from central government or delivery partners like Sustrans and National Highways. Sometimes smaller projects are also delivered in Wiltshire directly by developers, and this is can be aligned to new development. One example of our directly funded contributions is through our local highway and footway improvement groups, our LHVIGs. These help to identify small-scale local highway projects in each area, and they improve safety and also encourage walking and cycling. We have 18 LHVIGs in Wiltshire, one for each of our community areas. Each LHVIG is made up of Wiltshire Council elected members, town and parish council representatives, and also stakeholders from the local community. So it really is about local decision making and investment in local prioritised schemes. The LHVIGs currently have access to £250,000 in total. This year there's been an additional allocation for £250,000 available from something called our Community Infrastructure Levy. So there's an opportunity to build for substantive schemes as well. That's slightly larger schemes which have got local support, and these can range from a wide range of things in terms of safety objectives. So I would encourage anyone interested in promoting a local safety improvement, or indeed a walking and cycling improvement, to contact their town and parish council and their LHVIG in the first instance. And if the schemes are supported, they will then go through an assessment process with one of our qualified engineers. So all contact information and the submission process is available on our website.
Thank you very much. The next question is, will residents of Minor be able to get to a railway station? And will they be able to get a bus from the village to a local railway station so as to avoid driving? Tamara, are you able to answer that one?
Yes, thank you, David. I'm very happy to do so. Residents of Minor near Marlborough are able to access Hungerford Station by bus, and also Swindon Station. Appreciate those aren't the nearest stations to Minor, though it is in fact Bedwin Station. Our demand responsive transport service doesn't yet serve Minor, but we'll hope to look at that as part of our bus service review, so that there can be a closer connection to Bedwin Station.
Thank you very much. The next one is for Sam, and it's the improvements being made to the road from Chippenham to Swindon to go south means even more traffic, including significant numbers of HGVs, will come to a grinding halt at Marlborough and then the Collingbournes. What is planned to address this problem, please?
Thank you. Mindful of the locations referenced in the question, I think there's probably two parts in answer to this one. And one is the work that we are currently undertaking on the A3102 corridor, which is part of our Safer Road schemes. So the schemes and all of the interventions along that corridor are designed to identify safety concerns that have been modelled, and this is part of a Safer Roads Fund, which is key intention is to reduce the number of fatal and serious injuries over the next 20 years. The enhancements, I must be really clear, are not intended to enhance capacity, vehicle capacity on the network, and therefore I think they're unlikely to attract additional movements and actually see any diversion of traffic between the two corridors mentioned. I think specifically in terms of Marlborough and Collingbournes, I would highlight we are waiting on the publication of a study. It's called the M4 to South Coast study. It's a study which was undertaken by National Highways, and it is looking at regional connectivity and particularly access up to the M4 for HGVs. We understand that study is now going to be published in the spring, and this will indeed align with where we are going with the local transport plan and future delivery and implementation plans. As we've heard already, a key aspect of that is highlighting challenging routes with freight and ensuring that we are providing the right balance across the whole of the network for all our road users. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question is also for you, Sam, and it's, do you support the depriming of the A338? Now, I think I'm correct in saying the A338, for those who don't know, also runs through the Collingbournes and Tidworth down to Salisbury. Is that correct?
Thank you, David. Yes, that's correct. So depriming of any route affords the council as local transport and local highway authority greater powers to apply weight limits. What I would say is that depriming requires an alternative route to be identified of a suitable standard that can accommodate equivalent levels of traffic movement and HGVs. This is partly linked back to my answer to the previous question in terms of the publication of the M4 to South Coast study. At this moment in time, I should be really clear that no sufficient alternative has been provided or identified in terms of taking additional HGV traffic. So we are very much aware of local concerns, and a key part of the local transport plan is ensuring journey time reliability and, as I said, the right road users on the right parts of the network. But at this moment in time, we would not be in a position to make that decision.
Thank you very much. The next one is for Simon. So it is, why does the principal settlements sub-strategy for Salisbury fail to cover any of the transport or traffic issues associated with the Harnham Gyratory at Exeter Street and the A36, along with the wider congestion in Salisbury? The projected worsening of this situation associated with local planned housing growth or any measures needed to address this issue?
Thanks, David. Yeah, so the sub-strategy presents a policy direction, and that will filter into a refresh of the Salisbury transport strategy, which is very much committed to Wiltshire's emerging local plan. So could definitely cross-reference this with what we said in the local plan, but also the current Salisbury transport strategy aims to address the traffic issues at Harnham, Gyratory and Exeter Street, and we've already been successful. We've developed funds being secured to commit towards those works. There's very much a commitment there, but it's this is to set out the policy direction. So watch the space on that.
Thank you very much. Next question is also for you, Simon. So this is along the similar lines. It's the Salisbury Junction Improvements Project appears not to be mentioned in LTP. Why is that?
Thanks, David. Yes, so as I stated before, the LTP4 is aimed, and you'll see that across the board, not just on Salisbury, but also sort of more generally, that the idea is to set that strategic framework for the transport in Wiltshire. And sort of alluded to in the presentation, there are not lots of other works going on at a more detailed level to address those. And in terms of the more detailed specifics on the Salisbury Junctions schemes of the works is available on the website, which hopefully we can post in the chat for people if they want to have a look in any more detail.
Thank you very much. I will post that in the chat. The next question is for Sam. How can we stop speeding and excessive HGV traffic through our villages, including past schools and playgrounds?
Thank you. So road safety is a core priority for Wiltshire Council. It's part of our business plan and it's a fundamental part of the local transport plan. The freight sub-strategy sets out a full suite of measures which can assist, but ultimately, in some cases, I appreciate this is about driver behaviour and social responsibility. So there are physical interventions we can make, be it through signage, be it through additional footway provision and cycling provision, but there's also things we can do in terms of educating beyond those engineering measures. So Wiltshire's Freight Assessment and Priority Mechanism, that was set up some time ago to equally evaluate across the county all freight mitigation requests. So we prioritise interventions that have the highest impacts on local communities. So in the first instance, I would encourage people to let us know where they have those concerns and do that through their local community representatives. And we currently assess requests on an annual basis to identify the top priority schemes. What I would also say is that where there is speeding and excessive HGV traffic on routes that HGV should not be using, please again let us know, but also let Wiltshire Police know. We see pockets of it, but broadly I would say the freight industry is respectful of the network in Wiltshire, but we are very keen to continue that conversation with them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next question is for Tamara. Can we connect more railway stations with remote towns? Is the Marlborough-Hungerford link to remain? Also Marlborough to Bedwin, along with Mere and Zouch to Gillingham.
Thank you, David. Connecting our towns and villages to our railway stations is a priority, and we've recently improved services from Devizes to Swindon, Trowbridge, Salisbury and Chippenham, and also from Tidworth and Ludgershall to Andover Station. The connection from Marlborough to Bedwin and Hungerford stations is offered by the Wiltshire Connect demand responsive DRT service, and this is expected to continue. That also serves Pewsey Station. We are also looking to introduce a new DRT service linking Mere and I think Zeals rather than Zouch to Gillingham Station later this year.
Thank you very much. Next question is for Sarah. So, will LTP4 acknowledge that the road will LTP4 acknowledge that road construction generates vast quantities of carbon? And will it also acknowledge that increasing road space to accommodate more cars will attract more traffic?
Thank you very much. So the LTP4 tried to set out a balanced approach to managing competing and sometimes conflicting objectives. The carbon paper sets out the carbon impacts of the proposals within the LTP4. And one of the core objectives of the LTP4 is to ensure carbon is considered in our future transport planning. It should also be acknowledged that some of the increase in the road space will be to facilitate more carbon-friendly modes of transport, such as cycling and buses. And another example of where actions in the plan can help mitigate the impacts of more vehicles on the road is a proposal for targeted road infrastructure or junction improvements to relieve congestion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next question for Sam. Will you abandon your plans to support the widening of the A303 through Wiltshire and investigate a multimodal approach to congestion at peak times?
Thank you. I should start by saying we were very disappointed with the announcement to Council the Stonehenge Tunnel. We are very mindful of the amount of time and resource that went into securing the optimum solution for residents, for businesses, but also for key stakeholders across the wider area and ensuring resilience, particularly to the South Wales and Southwest. So we certainly recognise the problem is still there. we understand the need for capacity enhancements along the route and the need to ensure journey time reliability. But what I would say is we're also working very closely with our subnational transport body in terms of multimodal resilience, be that rail, be that public transport, to key destinations. So we continue to work with the Department for Transport and National Highways to determine the appropriate next steps in terms of the capacity enhancements on the road corridor, but we are working in a broader context to ensure sustainable travel wherever we can.
Thank you very much. The next one is for Simon, and it's given the increasing traffic pressures highlighted in the local transport plan evidence base, including Harnham Gyratory Exeter Street Junction nearing 97% capacity, and Wiltshire's own traffic modelling predicting worsened delays and queuing times, how does the council intend to address the significant transport challenges associated with local plan housing growth?
Thanks, David. Yeah, so as part of the local plan evidence base, there was a number of forecast scenarios for addressing the trip making and associated carbon footprint. And so the best sort of in terms of the detailed answer response for that would point you towards the evidence base, transport evidence base for the local plan. The evidence provides a detailed account of the measures necessary to mitigate the local plan growth. And these, as I sort of alluded to earlier, will also be fed into a refresh of the Salisbury transport strategy.
Thank you. Next question for Sam on a specific scheme. It's what's happening to the proposed Melksham bypass? Does it feature in LTP4?
Thank you. Yes, so Melksham Bypass does remain a major road network fund commitment for Wiltshire Council, and it's a key part of our local planning context. That said, as I said earlier, we are awaiting an update in terms of the M4 to South Coast strategic study, which we understand is now going to be available in the spring. And that study is intended to identify preferred route north to south through Wiltshire and surrounding authorities to ensure journey time reliability. So at this stage, funding mechanism for Melksham Bypass is not committed, or indeed we have a clear line of sight, but just to confirm, it is still a strategic objective as part of our major road network commitments.
Thank you very much. Next one for Simon. The LTP questionnaire concentrates on the greatest good for the greatest number. But what about people in sparsely populated rural areas who in any case have fewer transport options than people in towns?
Thanks, David. Yeah, so hopefully sort of the presentation sort of allayed some fears that we're concentrating in a certain area, and that's very much why we've designed to take into consideration the unique characteristics of the LTP4 in the county through this place-based approach, and by dedicating a specific rural-based, place-based sub-strategy for that. We've also obviously got the principal settlements in the market towns as well. So we're encouraging feedback on all of these to ensure that they take into account the different needs of these areas. It's also important to note that if you have any particular concerns around the questionnaire, there is a free text box, so there are particular comments that you don't think are captured in the sort of specific questions. Do feel free to put those in there as well so that we can capture those.
Thank you very much. Next one for Sam. What measures will be included in the plan to facilitate the use of motorcycles? For example, access to bus lanes, secure on and off street parking, and skid and slip resistant road surfaces.
Thank you. So at this stage, we don't have detailed delivery plans in terms of motorcycles particularly, but as you'll have seen from the draft documents, we have a clear commitment to ensure benefits for all modes of transport. I would certainly encourage any detailed suggestions to be submitted through the consultation process. And what I would highlight is we are currently prioritising a review of our car parking operations. So there's definitely opportunity to inform future locations of motorcycle parking, be it on and off street. We are also looking at asset management in terms of improvements, and of course we have received additional investment specifically for asset management prevention over the next 2-year period. So if you have specific concerns or queries or specific locations you would like us to look at, please do let us know. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Another one for you, Sam. Will you have any link by bus to the Five Rivers Leisure Centre, as at the moment the only access is either by car or walking?
Thank you. So we are in a fortunate position. We have received an additional, it's nearly £7 million through our bus service improvement plan to deliver additional public transport facilities to increase frequency of services where they know they will be well used, and also hopefully deliver new bus services. Tamara's highlighted already some of the commitments we've already made around demand responsive transport. Whilst I can't specifically say, yes, we will be delivering bus access to Five Rivers, what we'll absolutely be looking at is opportunities for improved accessibility. And I think what's really important for us to understand is the needs of the users. So how likely a bus service would be used to ensure that we could deliver a cost-effective, evidence-based solution. So we will take that away and give that further consideration.
Thank you very much. The next question is for Dominic. So this one is, in 2038, we face a world where the impacts of climate change are likely to be significantly more severe than they already are today. Does LTP4 provide enough viable alternatives to driving to encourage people in Wiltshire to make radical changes to how they move around, and with that, their carbon emissions?
Thank you. I suppose the key point to make is that carbon considerations play a fundamental role in LTP4 and the visions within it, and it's also a sensible point to make that as a rural county with dispersed population, we face a really significant challenge in reducing our car use. The policies and measures in LTP4 seek to reduce the carbon emissions. However, they also clearly and unashamedly identify the greater need in Wiltshire for private motor vehicle use compared to what you would see in a metropolitan area. So I suppose the question really is, does LTP have enough carrot and stick to change behaviour? And it's also really important to point out that there are limits to the influence of LTP4 because of the nature of the traffic and the journeys that cause most of our emissions. So if you look at cars and vans, for example, many journeys simply pass through the county. They have nothing to do with Wiltshire specifically or its residents or its businesses. It is just passing traffic. HGVs generate 20% of Wiltshire's emissions, but they follow routes that are largely dictated by commercial and government influences. So again, passing through. So there's a limit to what can be done to reduce these journeys, all their carbon emissions, because a lot of this traffic doesn't originate in Wiltshire. It doesn't end its journey in Wiltshire, and it doesn't stop in Wiltshire either. But back to the real point of carrot and stick and that change in behaviour, and the emphasis on providing residents with alternatives. What LTP4 does help influence is the need for better infrastructure. And with that comes a need for a greater need for government support. Whilst we recognise in Wiltshire the greater difficulties that we face as a rural authority, government, unfortunately, has recently removed the Rural Services Delivery Grant, which was created specifically to combat the issues that we faced as a rural county. So Wiltshire residents are now £4.5 million short in funding to address some of the issues that LTP4 is highlighting. So I think LTP4 actually does a very good job in highlighting the issues with rurality and identifying opportunities for improvement, but the real scale of success will come down in large part to the funding that we receive from central government.
Thank you very much. Next question for Simon. Does LTP4 provide improvements to bus services for people living nearby county boundaries?
Thanks, David. Yes. So in terms of the detail of that, the cross-boundary service improvements are included in the bus service improvement plan. So I'll get a link put on the chat, which will set out in more detail, which is effectively the delivery plan for public transport proposals as part of the LTP.
Thank you very much. Next one is for Sam. So in December 2024, Campaign for Better Transport released a report calling for a bus stop standard requiring certain immediate amenities to be placed at all bus stops. Will LTP4 include a bus stop standard to ensure bus users receive the best service possible while also encouraging new passengers?
Thank you. Yes, so this is something that we are currently developing. However, it won't necessarily form a part of LTP4 that we're talking about this evening because this is a strategic policy document. So what we're looking at the moment, building on the improvements we've already made in some areas, for example, around our real-time passenger information, is making sure those standards are fit for purpose in a local context, because what works very well in one area of Wiltshire may not be suitable in other parts of Wiltshire. So that work is ongoing at the moment, and mindful, as I say, that we have had additional investments secured through our bus service improvement plan. We will be moving forward with a delivery plan to ensure investment in bus infrastructure across the county.
Thank you very much. Next question is for Tamara. So how can you make safer cycling routes into towns, i.e. separate cycle paths, where roads are currently shared routes?
The government requires local authorities to develop local cycling walking infrastructure plans. They're known as LCWIPs, to ensure a strategic approach to identifying cycling and walking improvements at a local level. It is also the government's view that cyclists should cycle on roads, but they should be provided with segregated space away from both cars and pedestrians in the form of segregated cycle lanes. We've already developed several LCWIPs for many of the key towns across the county, and we're developing more for the other towns. And these will establish the key routes and the infrastructure that is needed to deliver them. However, we do acknowledge that there may not be sufficient highway space in some of our urban areas to enable footways and segregated cycleways alongside our roads, and so alternative options may need to be considered.
Thank you very much. Next one is for Sam. When will you push national highways to get the inside lane on the M4 potholes sorted, coming down the hill from junction 15 to London particularly?
Thank you. I'm very happy to take this up with National Highways. What I would highlight, though, is that everyone can also raise defects with National Highways directly. Perhaps we can put a link in the chat. So just to confirm, National Highways are responsible for the M4, the A303 and the A36 in Wiltshire. And so I would encourage anyone to report issues or defects directly with them so that they can ensure they are responding expediently.
Thank you very much. Next one is for Tamara. Would a cycle or footpath linking Amesbury, Longhenge and Salisbury please be considered? The current A road presents no safe means for walking alongside, and cycling is just too dangerous.
Thank you. We do recognise the importance of active travel, particularly in terms of public health benefits, and we're working hard to deliver new pedestrian and cycling improvements throughout the county in locations where they will ensure benefits and improved outcomes. Although the LTP doesn't go into specific details on individual schemes, we are seeking people's views on a number of policies to promote walking and cycling, including, for example, S1 policy, which is enabling active travel to be the preferred choice for shorter journeys or as part of a longer journey by improving journey safety, access and quality.
Thank you very much. And the next one is also for you, Tamara, and it's on buses. So it's are buses going to run more frequently, especially in rural areas?
So we have our Bus Service Improvement Plan, another acronym, I'm afraid, known as a BSIP, and it sets out our proposed service enhancements across the county. As you may have heard, and Sam referenced earlier, we've secured 7 million of additional funding from government to improve bus services across the county, and we are now working on the detail of that plan, and that will also include, as Sam mentioned earlier, not just the services themselves, but also the infrastructure, so i.e. the stops and the shelters and the information to enable bus travel to be easier, more convenient, more comfortable for users, to encourage them to take the bus whenever they can.
Thank you very much. The next question is for Sarah. By how much will the plan cut GHG emissions for transport in Wiltshire during the plan period, and how will it achieve this?
Thank you very much, David. So the plan outlines potentials to cut greenhouse gas emissions by about 5 to 10% by 2030. And there are plans for further assessments within the plan period so that we can reassess this. This is going to be achieved by a combination of measures and actions that are going to need to be made by individuals, organisations and the wider community to support a change in travel behaviour and hence help to reduce out these emissions. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And the next question is for Tamara, and it's quite similar to one that we've previously answered a couple of times, but it's worth repeating. So how is Wiltshire Council going to help the outlying villages get more connected and quickly?
Thank you, David. So yes, again, I would point to the Bus Service Improvement Plan, the BSIP, and the funding that we are looking to utilise to ensure that the county and particularly rural villages are better connected by bus. As you may know, we have been working on our demand responsive transport service, the Wiltshire Connect, in the Pewsey Vale for a year and a half now, and I'm pleased that passenger numbers have increased significantly and many more villages and people are able to be connected at times that suit them using the demand responsive transport service, which is bookable by an app or by telephone. The team are working hard to improve that service, but also to take all of the learnings into further services. And this year we should see Wiltshire Connect launch in the Rawwood and Bassett areas and also in Warminster and Mere. And we'll have more information on these exciting plans for those areas in the coming months.
Thank you very much. Next question is for Dominic. How is the council addressing the need to reduce carbon emissions and comply with its low carbon policy?
Thank you. Well, in line with Wiltshire Council acknowledging the climate emergency in 2019, as a council, we're committed to becoming carbon neutral as an organisation by 2030. And we're really making some fantastic progress towards that goal. Taking you away from LTP just slightly and speaking more generally, you'll see evidence of our decarbonisation efforts across the council, from solar panels and heat pumps on our buildings to electric cars in our fleet and consideration of the environment in every procurement process that we undertake. Just last week, you may have seen in the news, we took delivery of our first fully electric waste collection vehicle. So that'll allow us to undertake trials and see how we can continue the decarbonisation of our fleet into waste, which is fantastic. So we're very much on track to reach our net zero target as an authority by 2030. Now, the council would also like to make the county of Wiltshire carbon neutral in the same timeframe. However, we've been incredibly transparent in sharing the difficulties that we face in doing this. In a rural area like Wiltshire, transport is always going to be the largest contributor to emissions. 38% of greenhouse gas emissions come from transport, and that is primarily because of the rural nature of Wiltshire. So the problem that we face when we extend beyond what we can do as a council and look to the county as a whole is that Wiltshire Council has direct control of just 0.2% of Wiltshire's emissions. So therefore, aiming for carbon neutrality across the whole county requires all of us to take action. And no rural council can reach net zero through its own actions alone. One thing to look out for is the revised climate strategy and the delivery plans for 2025, which are going to Cabinet later this month. But alongside this, we have, as we're discussing tonight, the LTP4, which plays a key part in addressing Wiltshire's carbon emissions. So, as I said earlier, our success as an authority requires the support of central government, but it also requires the support of our residents.
Thank you very much. And now the final pre-submitted question this evening for Tamara. What are the plans for the new Salisbury rail station bus routes? Is there any information on how the new forecourt will be served by buses?
Thank you, David. I'm pleased that the passenger transport team is working really hard to improve bus services, working with the various operators. The bus services that are initially expected to extend beyond the city centre to serve the new bus stops at Salisbury rail station forecourt include the X3 to Bournemouth, the 20 to Blandford Forum, and the Stonehenge tour. And beyond that, additional services are expected to be extended there later in the year when additional driver resources become available. Buses that already pick up on Fisherton Street, close to the rail station, will continue to do so. And one of the bus stops has already been moved closer to the station to help with this.
Thank you very much. So we'll now move on to some of the questions that we received this evening. So I'm going to start with one for you, Sam. Can specific highways junctions with local safety issues be raised in the consultation? And if so, how?
Thank you. If there are concerns over specific local junctions across Wiltshire, I would encourage you not to raise them through this process. As we said, this is a strategic document, but as I said earlier, absolutely raise that through your LHFIG groups, through your local representatives, or contact our local highways team to ensure timely responses to those. So more contact details are available on the website. I won't take up time now going through those contact details, but we've got a link in the chat already, and I would encourage you to do that in the first instance.
Thank you very much. The next question is for Simon. Is there any system modelling of how the four policies interact with each other?
Thanks, David. So, I mean, there's sort of two parts to this question. I think of how I'm going to answer it. I think first, in terms of the sort of policy measures, we've through the assessment work for the LTP, the main, in terms of understanding their impact, has been through looking at the quantified carbon reduction. So, as alluded to in the presentation, we've tried to ascertain what we think the impacts might be. Clearly, looking at more specific measures and schemes, there would be a more detailed assessment of the likely impact of them for, say, for example, a new cycle scheme or junction improvement on there, and that would be through the normal sort of process for assessing schemes, which is known through a business case assessment process as well. More broadly, looking at in terms of the four sort of areas that we covered within the LTP in terms of our approach, we will be undertaking a regular assessment and review on the impact of the measures to understand their likely impact, so that can help to inform and shape future development of proposals as we move forward, so we can understand the likely impact as well as what is and isn't working. But as you said before, this is a kind of approach that is not completely new. It has been used in other areas, so we are trying to learn from other authorities in terms of how they are working, and the idea is they work alongside each other, and rather than sort of looking at giving specific measures on each of them, trying to look at them in a more of a holistic manner in terms of understanding their impact.
Thank you very much. The next one that we received this evening, Sam, hopefully you can answer this one. Can you explain what is being done for people who live in terrace houses and can't have EV chargers at their homes?
Thank you. So the government has just before Christmas announced some additional guidance and consultation in terms of electric vehicle charging. We've touched on this in terms of our detailed implementation plans. Earlier, we'll be coming forward on adoption of LTP4, but we do have a team specifically working on opportunities for on-street charging at the moment. We have some government grant available to support delivery of that, and we are currently reviewing firstly where we need to meet demand, so where are those challenges across the county which the market has not provided in a different way, and we will be undertaking further consultation in the spring.
Thank you very much. We're nearly out of time, so I will just ask two more questions. The first one is for Dominic. So it's part of the local transport plan details using digital connectivity as a way to reduce unnecessary travel. To what extent do you think that digital connectivity is a replacement for in-person connections, especially as loneliness among young people and the elderly is so high? Do you foresee any issues with reducing in-person connections in favour of digital ones?
It's a really good question, and the simple answer is I can't answer it. I could answer it personally. I could give you my views on it, but everyone is going to be different. You know, as an employee, as a resident, they will have different ideas as to how they want to socialize and how they want to work. And you know, we see it all across the country, all across the world, where some companies are happy for their employees to stay and work from home with a good stable internet connection. Others are recalling their employees into work. So everyone has a different view on this. So yeah, certainly there'll be barriers for some people, and there'll be barriers for some businesses to working remotely, and for others it won't be a problem at all.
Thank you very much. And the final question this evening is for you, Sam. So it's, will LTP4 include policies for comprehensive off-road networks of walking and cycling routes, as well as well-designed greenways in the principal settlements, in particular in relation to Salisbury, to enable cleaner, safer, active travel?
Thank you. Mindful of time, I'm going to provide a very short response, and absolutely we are seeking to secure appropriate balance of recreational and utility cycle routes across the county. So that will fall out of our LC WIPs and also our detailed delivery plans in those areas which are not covered by LC WIPs.
Thank you very much. So that brings an end to the questions this evening. Thank you once again for taking the time out to join us this evening and for your questions and comments. We hope that you found it informative. We'll upload this webinar to YouTube, and it will be available in the next day or two. Please do make sure you take the time to respond to the LTP consultation. We've posted the link in the chat, and that has all the information you need to be able to respond. Thank you again, and have a good evening.